It is such an honor talking to you. Now, your story is so inspiring. You've had the opportunity to share it nationally, the Ellen Show, you've done a TEDx talk, but what you're doing locally is changing so many lives. So, Rob, for anyone who doesn't know your story, growing up, dealing with tragedy, and turning it into something positive with comfort cases, can you tell us about your life and what led you to everything you're doing today?
I think we all have a purpose, and some of us takes longer to find out what our purpose is than others. And for me, my childhood was probably not like many of your listeners. I'm the youngest of 10 kids. My mother had been married 6 times, and we lived in and out of every shelter in Virginia, Maryland, and DC. And life was really hard. I always would talk about the monster who lived in our house, and that monster happened to be my dad. And growing up and not having a role model of a true father should be, it was hard. And then at the age of 12 my parents died, and for me it was a pretty I was pretty lucky, I thought, because I was going to foster care and someone's going to love me and take care of me, and that happened for a while. But then the cute little 12-year-old boy turned into the 16-year-old, who turned into the 17-year-old, who then turned into an 18-year-old senior in high school. And it was the fall of my senior year, 1984. I'll never forget it. I came home a couple of weeks after my 18th birthday, and instead of celebrating the fact that I'm in my last year of high school and I had made it and I was a good kid, I was given a trash bag. And I literally became homeless. And I lived on the streets of Northern Virginia. I would go to school every single day, and I would hide my trash bag behind the bushes, and I would hope that kids wouldn't make fun of me or shove me in a locker, because I couldn't tell you the last time I had showered or brushed my teeth. I mean, it was hard. I remember standing in the lunchroom, and I would wait for all the kids to leave the cafeteria, and I would dig through the trash can and gather as much food as I could from the kids that didn't eat their food, because I didn't know if I was going to eat that night. And I had a $3.35 an hour taco job at the local taco stand. And the owner was nice enough to leave the outside bathroom door unlocked for me at night so I could sleep there. And I did that through October and November and December and January and February and March and April and May. And then June finally came around. June came around, and I was finally going to graduate from high school. See, my community had taught me at that point in my life that there were three most important things. And those three important things were: number one, me, me, me. That's what they showed me, that I had to buy a big house and have a fancy car and have lots of money, because that's what defined me as success. And I just knew as a homeless kid, I had to be better than where I was that particular moment in my life. And I graduated from high school. I joined the United States Navy. I became a successful businessman, and I never looked back. I refused to talk about my past. I didn't want people to judge me because I was uneducated, that I had lived on the streets. I wanted people to know me for the successful business person that I was. And by the way, I bought that big house, and I bought not one fast car, but two, and I filled my bank account with more money than I could ever imagine to have. But it didn't fulfill the fact that I always wanted to be a dad. And then 15 years ago, I met my husband, and the first thing I asked him was, "Do you want to be a dad?" And he said, "Yes." And 2 years after that, we put our application in to be a father. And not only did one child arrive, but within less than 6 months, we had four kids arrive from foster care. The thing that got me is when my children arrived, all of them carried a trash bag, each and every one of them. I couldn't believe it. See, I had carried a trash bag in the system. I had carried a trash bag as a homeless kid. And I remember saying to the social worker, "Are you absolutely kidding me? That after all of these years, we still can't get it right, and we still are allowing kids to carry trash bags?" And I remember the social worker said to me, "Well, what should they carry?" And I thought, what about some dignity? And that really weighed heavy on my heart. But as a dad of four kids and trying to make it, and had never been a parent before, much less had ever had any decent role models. I was just trying to, be a dad. And so every year we would do these huge toy drives in DC. We would actually stand in front of Ben's Chili Bowl, and WPGC would be there, and people would drop off toys. And it became a yearly thing that people really looked forward to. And I had an office on the West Coast and on the East Coast, and I traveled a lot, and it was all work, 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 work until 7 years ago. I came home from a business trip, and I was sitting in my office, and Reece walked into my office and said, we need to start talking about the toy drive to prepare, because we would have to prepare months in advance. And I said, I don't want to do it. And he said, what do you mean you don't want to do it? And I said, I don't want to do the toy drive. And he was like, what are we going to do? And I said, I want to eliminate trash bags. And he was like, what? And I was like, I want to eliminate trash bags. I want kids in DC and Maryland never to carry a trash bag in foster care. And he said, Rob, that is a huge undertaking. And I said, but I think we can do it. And so I got some of my senior VPs together, and we sat around in a conference room with some volunteers, and we started talking about my journey, about being a kid in the system carrying a trash bag, about my children carrying a trash bag, about the fact of how children in our foster care system feel disposable, they feel invisible, and they feel they do not matter. And maybe that if we started them off on their first night with some comfort, to let them know that as a community we love them, maybe we could start changing the statistics of our system. See, most of your listeners don't even realize that we have 438,000 children in foster care, Bennett. Out of the 438,000 children in foster care, only 54% of them will actually graduate from high school. Only 54%. That only 11% apply to a college, and only 3% of the 438,000 will get a 4-year degree. This year alone, we will see 30,000 children age out of foster care, age out just like I did. And 70% of them, they'll become homeless within 2 years.
So your solution to all of this was comfort cases. You basically said, I don't want these kids to carry around their belongings in a trash bag. I want to do something different for them and make them feel some sense of dignity. So that's what comfort cases is all about. You give them these bags that are not trash bags, they're comfort cases. So talk about what is in these comfort cases.
We'll give them a brand new pair of pajamas with a tag on it. We'll make sure that every child gets a toothbrush, toothpaste, their own lotion, their own shampoo, their own conditioner, and their own bar of soap. And remind you, I tell this to people all the time. If you do not think that a bar of soap is important for a child in the system, the next time we are out of this pandemic and we're all staying in hotels, I want us to call the hotel up and ask them to leave the bar of soap from the people before you, and then get in the shower and use it. You won't. No one would. Why? Because it's dignity. And children deserve that. Children are placed in a home of people they do not know, and then we expect them to assimilate immediately within that home. It's not fair to them. We need to make sure they have their own. Then we give every child a book. I truly believe that education is what changes each and every one of us, and we must get children to love to read. We also must understand that children who are in the system, they do not get books. I was in my 20s before I owned my first book. And I can tell you this as an author. We write our books for only two reasons. One, we want you to love it in your mind. Number two, we want you to love it in your heart. But the most flattering thing you could ever do for a book, for an author, is pass it on. Pass it on. Because I believe that there's no such thing as a used book. It's only a book that's been loved. Then we give every child an activity. Kids who are over the age of 10, they get a journal, a pen and pencil set, and kids under the age of 10 get a coloring book and crayons. We know that over 87% of all kids in our foster care system arrive in the back of a police cruiser, and they're put in holding centers where they could be there all day. We want to make sure that we give them an activity. And then finally, every kid gets a blanket. And by the way, we don't give them a blanket because they're cold. My son Grayson was 6 years old when we started this charity. He said, Daddy, we need to give everybody a blankie. I said, a blanket? I said, you do know these kids aren't cold. And he said, no, Daddy, every time they wrap themselves up in their blankie, they know we love them. Wow. At the end of the day, that's what each and every one of us want. We want to be loved. We want to know that we matter. And so we started with a couple of hundred cases. And the next thing you know, we became a national charity where we have given out over 120,000 cases to all 50 states, DC, and Puerto Rico. And Bennett, let me tell you something. We have done it with the largest corporation in the world. The largest corporation in the world, our human race. Our human race. We have no corporate sponsors. Everything that we have done has been done because of the love of our community. And your listeners must realize one thing: your community, it is not your zip code. It's not. It's our human race. It's our human race. And our forefathers built communities for one reason, and that was for each and every one of us to take care of each other. You're hungry and I have a piece of bread, I should share that with you. And if I'm hungry and you have a piece of bread, you should share it with me. The future of children in foster care rely on the fact that we as a community let them know they matter. And so little would I know that the banker who sat behind a desk pushing numbers most of my life would now be a national spokesperson who goes all over the country to educate people about foster care. And one thing that I realized, those three important things that I told you about, the big house, the fast car, and all the money, that's not what it's about. It's not at all. Your three golden rings should be: one, your family, your family. Number two, your community. Your community should be so important. But most of all, your dash. I talk about the poem, it's written all the time. We each are given one, whether you're white or black or rich or poor, gay or straight. Every one of us are going to be given the same exact thing. Walk through your graveyards, you see it: the year you're born, your dash, and the year you die. I want my dash to be impactful. I want my dash to shine so bright that when my children walk by it, they say, you know what? My dad, he was a doer. And that's what it's all about.
Wow, I'm speechless. I Before I even go on with my next question, just got to tell you, listening to that, I think about how, there's so much going on in the world right now that is hard to see and it's scary. And then we live in as uncertain times as they say. But hearing from people like you and seeing what you're doing with Comfort Cases, just who you are as a man and the difference that you have made in so many lives, it gives me hope because it's easy to get swept up in all of the negatives and all of the statistics that are negative. But when we see the difference that you're making is just, it's incredible. Now, I want to talk about a few lives in particular, your children. You as Gosh, you must be the most incredible father. I don't even know where to start, but just when we think you can't be any more amazing with what you're doing with Comfort Cases, you and your husband Reece have taken in these amazing kids who are living in foster care, and you've raised them and uh, you've given them a better life. So talk about that.
Oh my gosh, my kids are absolutely amazing. And Bennett, by the way, I don't have four children. I now have five. So we had our fifth child arrive in the fall of last year. And I'll talk about Alex in a little bit. But our first children arrived, Amaya and Makai, and they were 4 and 2. And by the way, my sweet daughter, Amaya, she turned 16 today. She is an honor student. She is the kind, giving. She is just the most unbelievable human. And then there's my son Makai. And my son Makai, who they told us he was never going to talk and never going to walk. And were we sure that we wanted this one as if he was a piece of clothing? I will let you know that my son Makai, who is 13 now, he walks and he talks and he loves. And every day he reminds me of what it's like to be a good human. And he reminds us all that each and every one of us need to look at the world upside down. Because when you look at the world upside down, you really can figure it out. And then there's my sweet boy Grayson, who is 13, and he was 2 years old when he arrived with his baby brother Tristan, who was 6 months, who is now 11. And so my kids are just amazing. They're resilient. But one thing that they have realized is that in a life that we live, things are different. And I have to make sure that your listeners understand I am a white privileged male who is raising four Black kids in society today. It is definitely not easy. My children are looked at the skin color. When I walk into Nordstrom's, they want to know what my credit score is. When my son Grayson, who wears a size 13 shoe and he's 12 years old and he stands 6 foot tall and he walks into Nordstrom's, they want to know, what is he going to steal? People say to me all the time, I was doing an interview yesterday with People Magazine, and they were talking about how do we talk to our boys about being black because we're two white dads. And I told them, I said, we talk to them just like any other parent. We have to explain to them, number one, don't put your hands in your pocket. Number two, don't put your hoodie on. Number three, if a police officer pulls us over, please put your hands on the dashboard immediately. Could you imagine your parents having those conversations with you? Those are the conversations that we have to have almost on a daily basis. But what my children have realized is that I can't teach them to be black. I can't teach them to be white. But what I can teach them to do is be good humans, to be good humans, because that's what we all should strive to do. And then there's my son, Alex. See, last year, Bennett, I was at a local high school, actually in the county that you and I both live, and I was giving a speech. There was a young boy that I saw sitting in the audience, and for some reason, he caught my eye, and I could tell he was a little emotional about my speech that I was giving. And after the speech was done, the auditorium emptied out, and this one young boy stayed with the guidance counselor and the principal. And he walked up to me and he had my book in his hand and he said, Mr. Scheer, will you sign my book? And I said, of course. I said, what's your name? And he said, my name is Alex. And I said, Alex, tell me something about you. And he says, there's nothing to tell. And I said, what do you mean there's nothing to tell? We all have a story. And he said, no. He said, I'm a senior in high school. He says, I'm going to be 19. I'm getting ready to age out of foster care, and I'm going to be homeless just like you were. You know, I meet children all over the country, but for some reason, those words that that boy said to me stuck in me like I had never felt before. And I looked at that young boy and I said, Alex, it doesn't have to be that way. And he says, no, it's going to be that way. And he said, by the way, Mr. Scheer, he says, I have a 3.6 in school. I looked at the guidance counselor and the principal and I said, are you kidding me? And they said, no. And as the principal, she was tearing up. I pulled out my card and I handed Alex my business card. And I said, listen, this has my private phone number on it. I said, I want you to call me. I said, we're going to figure this out. And I then gave my card to the guidance counselor and the principal. And I said, listen, I said, I have to run to give another speech. I said, but we have to talk about this young boy. I said, his future depends on us making sure that it's brighter. And I left, weighed on my heart that whole entire day, Bennett. And I went home and I told my family about this young boy that I had met and about how there was something in his eyes that I saw that I don't know how I could describe it, but I saw me as a young boy and as a high school senior. And my one son said to me, Dad, we should invite him over for dinner if he calls. And lo and behold, the next day he called and I answered the phone and he said, hi, Mr. Scheer, this is Alex. Do you remember me? And I said, buddy, it was only been 24 hours. Of course, I will never forget you. And I said, and by the way, call me Rob. And so he said, how is your day going? And I said, my day's going really well. I said, what about yours? And he says, oh, it's okay. I said, Alex, by the way, my son asked if you would like to come and have dinner with us this weekend. And he said, really? And I said, yeah. And he says, well, I don't know if my foster parents will allow it. And I said, you know what? I'll give them a call and we'll get it figured out. Well, I called his foster parents, and lo and behold, they agreed for him to come to dinner. And the next thing you know, Alex came for dinner, and then he came for a week. And then the next thing you know, Alex now lives with us. He's been living with us since the fall. He is now our son. He is enrolled in college. He turned 19 in January. And when he was aging out of the system and he was signing some documents, he got really emotional. And I said, Alex, what's going on? And he says, I can't believe I don't have this anymore. And I said, buddy, it doesn't matter because you have the Shears. I was like, your family. I was like, these documents mean nothing. You will always have a home. You will always have two dads that love you and that will support you. And I said, and we're just proud that you're our son. So yeah, now we have 5 kids.
Wow. Just when I think again, just when I think you can't pull out another amazing part of your life, wow, speechless again. But everything you've been through in your life, all the ups and downs, I know that's got to have influence on you as a parent and the lessons that you're able to teach your kids from what you've been through. I imagine one of the most fascinating things about being a parent is probably maybe what they teach you. So whether it's what it's like to be a kid today in the 21st century, just in general, how have your kids inspired you and Reese to keep being the kind-hearted, hardworking parents that you are?
You know what? I just look in their eyes. I look in their eyes every single day when it's cloudy outside. I look in my children's eyes and I see rainbows. I see rainbows. And I see that because I see the love that they give their dads. I see the fact that they know truly what unconditional love is. See, the problem is us as humans feel like because you're born into a family, you automatically love. But we all must understand something. Love is just something that just doesn't happen for people. You have to truly love unconditionally. Unconditionally. And that means that my kids aren't always going to agree with me, and I'm not going to always agree with my children, and my husband and I aren't going to agree with them. But what we're going to do is we are going to love them unconditionally. And they taught us that. And they taught us the fact that we never say the word never. Never. We were told we would never be parents because we were two white gay men. We were told that our son would never talk. We were told that we would, never be able to have more than one kid. And now we have five. We just never say the word never. But one thing I've learned from all of five of our children is that kids are resilient. Kids are resilient. They are truly resilient and they truly get it. And they get it a lot more than what we realize. When I go around and I speak at schools or when I hear my children even speak, and by the way, a couple of my children will actually come and do speeches with me. And I look at them and I realize my future is so bright. It is so bright. And why? Because kids like my children, like all of the kids that I get to meet, like you, Bennett, you actually are the future for me. And for me, I feel so good about it.
To be included in that is such an honor. Wow. Again, I don't even know what to say, but I do want to talk about this really new exciting project that you're doing relating to parenthood. So I mentioned at the beginning, you've been well known as an author. You've got a book titled The Forever Family, the podcast Fostering Change. And now you and Reece have gotten this huge opportunity to be a part of Dads. It's the Apple TV Plus documentary coming out on June 19th. Jimmy Fallon, Neil Patrick Harris, Ken Jeong, Will Smith, Kenan Thompson, the list goes on. All these people involved with the project, and your stories included. I want to know how this came together. I know it must have been a crazy phone call. I imagine it did not take much thinking to say yes. I want to hear all about that.
So actually, we had just finished filming a TV show on Amazon called Vacations of the Braves. So if you haven't seen it, go to Amazon, episode 6. And Bryce Howard, who's the director, Ron Howard's daughter, who also was in Jurassic Park, and she actually saw our story. And she had her team reach out to Reese and I and asked if we would be interested in talking about a new documentary that she wanted to do. Mind you, we didn't know it was her. We were just told it was a new documentary that they wanted to do called Dads. And this was about a year and a half ago. And I got the email. I told my husband about it, and I said, you know what? Let's just do a call. And so we did a Zoom call with the production team, and they got to meet the kids on the Zoom call, and they thanked us for it, and then they said, you'll hear from us in a couple months, and life just went on. We didn't think anything else about it. We were on vacation, and which is something rare that I do, but we were actually at the beach on vacation with the family, and I got an email from the producer saying that we had been selected to be part of this documentary, but we needed to go through one more step, and that was to have a meeting with the director. And so I was like, wow, I wonder who this is. And then next thing you know, it's Bryce Howard. And it's like, what? It's like,
Wow.
because I'm a huge fan of hers. And so she was so genuinely kind and nice. And, we had the best talk, and the kids got to meet her. And so then they narrowed it down to like 15 dads, and we were part of the 15. And then they narrowed it down to 12 dads, and we were part of that 12. And then they filmed. They came out and they followed us. They filmed. It felt like forever. And so then they took the filming back, and then they took those dads and narrowed it down to 9 dads, and then narrowed it down to 7, and then narrowed it down to 6. And we were
Wow.
part of the 6. So when Bryce called us and said, congratulations, you're the dads that were chosen, it was just unbelievable. I mean, I've seen the documentary. I've watched it twice with my family. It is, the thing that I say so often is that, my whole life I wanted to be a dad. I wanted to be a dad my whole life, and this documentary shows some of the most amazing dads out there and about how important it is to be good role models, not only for good role models for you to be to your kids, but how your kids are amazing role models to you as a dad. And so yeah, it's just been crazy. I mean, the last couple of weeks we've been on Good Morning America, People Magazine. It's just the whole crazy, 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 crazy thing. But we're excited. Apple TV on Friday, June the 19th, called Dads. Um, Follow me on social media, Rob underscore Scheer, all on my Instagram, Facebook, and see the journey. Because by the way, it doesn't stop here. I In the fall, I will be doing a new show in the fall that I'm pretty excited about, and I might have to come back on your show, Bennett, to make the big announcement. But yeah, there's it's the thing that I say all the time is if I can educate one person when it comes to foster care, one person when it comes to my children. And right now we have 100,000 children waiting for adoption in the United States in foster care. 100,000 waiting for a forever home. If doing this show can get one person to say, you know what, I think I want to adopt a kid out of foster care, then I did exactly what needed to be done.
Well, I was gonna ask you to plug the social and do all that. Everything was covered, so that's awesome. But I want to thank you again because it's been such an experience for me just to hear you speak and such an honor that you've come on this show. Thank you so much. I don't know what else to say. Thank you for being
Oh, you're
here.
welcome, my friend. Listen, everybody, visit comfortcases.org. Learn about our story. The book is called A Forever Family, Fostering Change One Child at a Time. Every time you buy the book, it builds a case for a kid in the system. And by the way, at the end of the day, all of your listeners need to know these kids don't belong to me. They don't belong to you. They belong to us. And for us, we need to make their future bright.